Hello, this is Neo, just an average CSGO player, and you're watching Thorin's YouTube channel.
This was around the time where, as referenced earlier, they did the World Esports Games, which was this Korean-run tournament, and they would have it in Korea, and it wasn't just like a CPL lasts like 3-4 days. This would be like a month long, and you basically had to live there. You had to go there and live in like a little chalet, and basically your teams, because you couldn't attend, and I think someone else didn't go, they used to just take ringers and go there. And by the way, they didn't particularly ever do it very well. So I want to ask you about that. Like, what was it like being on the outside looking in? Were you ever thinking like, are they going to replace me when they come back? What if this guy does better than me? Were you watching the games from back in America? What was it like?
I don't think they were gonna. I had zero thought that they were gonna replace me because they took Medrano, who we didn't have a choice. I think at that point they kind of just took him last minute as a ringer. And I didn't think he was, better than me at that point. If anything, he was like a lower tier player. So I had zero worries about my spot on the team, but it's kind of sucked. I felt like we could have won if I was there for sure. If you didn't know, that's kind of where our team kind of fell apart.
I basically heard one of the problems was because they were like just all in one chalet for like a month. It was like steel cage deathmatch or something, right?
Yeah, I honestly, I don't know exactly what happened. It's just they came back and, it wasn't a good feeling, obviously. And I think that's when Corey Haynes left the team. But I think it was one of those situations where, like, you go to college with a friend of yours that you grew up with and you're best friends, and then you live with him and it's like a different thing.
Yes.
And I'm not talking
analogy.
like it was,
no, that's
I'm not
good.
saying it was, I'm not saying it was Corey. I'm just saying, like, I think it just kind of drove all those guys insane.
Yeah.
And
it's obviously different to scrim with someone and then have to be around them all the rest of the day as well.
I really don't know exactly like who was toxic and what happened, but they came back, and I think Corey left right away, and then I don't know if Derek left or if he had like another offer or something like that, but he ended up leaving, and we ended up having to go to CPL that next tournament with kind of like a pickup team too.
Yes, we'll get to that. One other thing, because obviously this is going to tie into what you were just referencing there, is that even though I'm skipping around the timeline, I also remember at one point in 2004, that was when that Swedish player, Goodfella, who obviously, by the way, used to play for the Adrenaline team that used to practice against you guys when he was Zero Respect. He actually was in the US because he had a girlfriend. I think he maybe met her at like CPL or something. He used to have a girlfriend, and at one point he was trying to be on this team. Like, I think he came out for a few months, but then he couldn't, maybe he couldn't come back or couldn't get the flight or something. He was supposed to be on the team at one point, right?
Yeah, he was on the team. It was a weird situation because he wasn't there to like replace anyone. Right. We just had a nice stable 6-man roster, and just kind of rotated him through. But I think it's kind of came a situation where he just financially just couldn't stay.
Right.
And it just I think he was an older guy. I think he was 22 at that point. And we didn't have any sponsors obviously at that point.
Sure.
So he was a super cool, grounded, like I met him and I just imagined all the Swedish guys were like him.
Right.
He was like a really good guy, like really good, super grounded, cool guy, and obviously a good teammate, good player too, solid player as well. But I don't remember how long that experiment lasted, but I think he just kind of had to go home, and it just didn't work out.
And then, as you say, the next year, maybe this is the one good thing that came out of the WEG experiences, because those guys went over there, they got to meet some of the other Europeans. And so you actually had that legendary Norwegian player, Dark, came and played a CPL with you, even though it's kind of a weird culture clash, I'm sure. What was it like to have him in your team?
He was like another good fella, to be honest.
Okay.
Just like super nice guy, super good guy. Obviously very skilled and very reliable. I feel like that CPL, it just kind of sucked because that was the one that we really truly wrote our seed for sure. I feel like we didn't play any good teams at CPL except for the ones that we lost to. But he was a super good fragger, obviously very reliable, but we just didn't have a lot of time to gel together, So it truly felt like a pickup team full of high quality players, obviously. He was super good guy. I have nothing but good things to say about him.
One thing I would ask is, like I said, even though from the outside, if I'm used to like tactical teams, I was thinking, are they playing like POG here? People just playing off loose calls. But I feel like it's only when that lineup broke apart, people realised there was obviously a magic to those 5 players, right? You somehow fit together in a certain way.
I think we definitely, like, that was our reputation, like we were just kind of pugging it because we were also good, just aim-wise, any one of us could have went off and just, top fragged in a game, but we were pretty tactical.
Right.
We had a lot of strategy that went into how we played, and especially that first CPL, I think people didn't know how we played, right? Which is why it took so many people by surprise. But no, we were everything was very planned out the way we played. That third CPL, it wasn't, to be honest, because it was pretty much a pickup team with method. But the first two CPLs that whole year, we were a lot more tactical than I think. Mark and Johnny were really the brains behind our operation, and they really did a good job, in my opinion.
Right. I want to ask, because after this, wasn't it that they originally had that thing where the team got that sponsor, the Ouch, Colgate sponsored it for the World Cyber Games qualifier. You were in it, but then after that, you weren't in like the rival super team after that. So what happened in this period? I mean, in this period, I'm guessing if you had the sponsor, probably thought things were headed up.
It was, but that was towards the end.
Right.
I had to go to college, and that was always the goal. I just didn't want to put off, I know I could have put off a year of college, but I really was kind of just afraid of being, left behind and watching all my friends go,
Sure.
So I just wasn't comfortable. I truly felt at that point there was no future in gaming for the short term. I thought it was just too early. And I did think there was a future, obviously. I think Twitch had just come out too when I quit.
Okay.
Like I remember the first streams were coming out and I was like, what is this? This is stupid. And obviously I was wrong about that,
Sure.
right? But I just truly felt that there was I think that was a time too that like the sponsorship money was kind of just going down every year. So it just to me sounded like it was going down and there wasn't really a future. And obviously I was wrong about that for the long term, but I think I made the right decision, if anything, right? I don't think by the time I was 30 or 35 that I was going to be sticking around or anything like that.
Because I don't know if you ever checked in, but when they went with that, like, the super team, because they got, like, all the best players then from, like, the other Asian teams, basically, like, Keen joined and all those people joined back, and they made this super team, and they went to the CPL and famously got upset immediately by, like, a mixed team, like, round one or something, and I think that's another one which blew the whole team up immediately, so
I think that,
did you ever check in on that?
I obviously, I followed the scene for the next year, so it was kind of sad watching that, because I had that relationship with Keen from GX and Bombs from WW.
Yes.
And obviously my other rival teammates. So I thought it was cool they were getting together, but I think that was like the penultimate, like, team doesn't fit together.
Right.
Like those guys were all good players and it just didn't gel. It just didn't work together. It was a bad mix, in my opinion.
By the way, even though he himself was a quiet guy, I actually always thought Keen was an underrated player. Like, he's a guy, whenever I watched him in games, he seemed really skilled.
Yeah. Very skilled, very reliable, very focused player for sure. Very, very focused player. Very solid. Clutch too, in my opinion. I know he didn't really continue on after. I'm not really sure what happened after
I think he didn't have a
but,
very long career after that either.
Yeah. But the times that I did play with him, I mean, like even at ESWC when I told you I played poorly, he definitely helped carry us that tournament.
And then obviously I waited till now to ask, but put it this way, I've heard from every person who played with this guy that Method absolutely lives up to the hype, and that it's like the joke is in scrims is even more insane, right? He's just the guy who's got impossible skill, right?
Yeah, I mean, what's funny is that I've known him for so long throughout my CS career, so I definitely saw him, like, he was just, in terms of aim, he was always up there. He was super reliable. I think he always did what was told. He wasn't really a leader. No. Wasn't very vocal, but he was very flexible. It's like, we'd always have to, I feel like in GX, like we always had trouble like finding a reliable fifth, and we'd always try different people out, and Method would be the guy that would have to rotate and play all these different positions, and he would still just kill it. He would, obviously good rifler, good silence Colt, but sometimes he'd pull out an op, and really good opper as well too. Very clutch too when it mattered, in my opinion.
Are you someone, obviously, like you say, you actually had the plan, you knew what time you had to get out, you enjoyed the time you were there. Do you ever do a what if? Like, what if I'd got in 3D? Or what if, another obvious one is, what if we'd won one of the World Cyber Games qualifiers, we could have gone to one of those tournaments, right?
I do think about what ifs, because I did have offers from, and I'm not going to sit here like, I'm the only person on my team that had offers.
Oh, sure.
Like I know, obviously, Destructo got poached, and I know for sure all my other teammates probably had offers from everybody too. I do think about what ifs, but I just had so much fun playing with those rival guys. And for me, it's like knowing that I knew I was going to quit after my senior year of high school that summer and go off to college. I think it would have been a mistake for me to have joined 3D and try to go that professional route and all that. It might have even, altered the course of my life, to be honest with you, right? I might have stayed on and tried to play longer, but I just had all I can remember is just laughing all the time playing with those guys. It was, and I'm not trying to say I didn't have fun playing with GX and WW, but it was just such a different element that I wasn't exposed to at all. And especially, it's weird being with a bunch of white guys. It's like I hang out with Asian guys my whole life,
sure.
Right? And totally different experience. And I truly think that going into college, it helped me bring me out of my shell, number one.
Right.
Like being a dentist, like I have to have good chairside manner. I have to have good social skills, and I think it really, it's weird saying this, but being with those guys, like, it helped me build up a sense of self-confidence, I guess. Albeit, it's probably a lot of false confidence, but I truly wouldn't, go back and, want to, trade that for joining 3D or, Complexity or some other team like that.
I feel like one thing you must, and a lot of people who didn't do this share the same sentiment, is even though you didn't record the demos, I bet you wish you had a frag movie now, though. That's one thing that'd be cool. If it was like a proper good frag movie,
Yeah. No, I do. That's one thing I do regret, even though back then I didn't care, it's like.
Just to watch it now, though, to show someone you meet. If
Yeah. Because, it's like, I know it's all in my head, and I know it's in my peers' heads too. Like I had some, nice moments too, but I never just, tried to look for demos and store all of them. And, cause I did have people ask me, but I just back then just really didn't care for it, and now for sure, I do wish I did have something, but it is what it is.
And as you say, to show people how you came out your shell, you were a guy back then. I bet no one even bothered asking you for an interview. You just weren't the guy who did media stuff, right?
No, I joked with you before we did this. You were literally the only person that did a video interview with me, and it was Winter 2004.
Right.
And literally 20 years ago, which is kind of crazy now. Think about that. But you were literally, and the only reason I remember that was because you were the only one. And,
it's because actually back then, even though I myself was a bit of like a nerd, etc., I just used to think, fuck it, just ask everyone. And then if they said no, they said no. Yeah, stick with it. Yeah. No,
I thought it was really cool. And I just remember watching that interview, and I felt like it was in like 240p, like super grainy,
of course.
Back then. Yeah. But I didn't do a lot of media. I wasn't really into it. And again, it's because I didn't feel like I needed to build myself up for the future, especially if I felt like I had like kind of like an expiration date to say the worst.
Right. Are you, if you're, do you still play games? Are you still got like gaming friends and stuff?
Rarely. I have two kids now.
Okay.
They're 6 and 8, so I don't have time. I rarely play. I played Valorant when it first came out, but I quit pretty quickly because number one, I just didn't have time, and number two, I'm just not as good anymore.
Okay.
To especially some of these players today.
Is it the case that were there ever times where you'd find someone who played CS afterwards, and then you'd be like, do you know who I am, or do you remember me, or I was good at the game? Did you ever have that sort of feeling?
I would run into some people online playing other games, and they would say my name, and I could tell they were like old school players. But like, some of these newer guys, I don't think they know who I was, but definitely I've had people call me out in like, pub servers and public games and, like Valorant and stuff like that. Yes. But yeah, nothing too crazy.
By the way, what is Medias? What is the name supposed to be?
So I was like 13 or 14 at the time. I was trying to figure out like a very unique, username. And I remember seeing a billboard in Koreatown, and it was like a Korean underwear company. It was like a Korean underwear and like wife beater company. And I just thought the billboard and advertisement looked funny, so I just took that on, and I just never looked back. It was kind of a dumb name, to be honest, but it was unique. So
yeah, it was unique. That's the key.
Yeah. No,
I always tell people the real reason actually even silly names work in the game is because if they don't have any actual meaning, if you're good, that just becomes the meaning, doesn't it? It becomes cool. Like, put it this way,
exactly.
Potty in theory should be a silly name, but it seems dope if you played him. Like, he was the shit, wasn't he? Yeah, he was the king.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking too.
Have you ever actually been to Korea?
Yeah, no, I've been now like multiple times. My wife's family's from Korea. So
is it wild
I
to see the esports shit there?
It is, and it's kind of crazy that I still feel like I missed out on WEG, but
Sure.
I'm not surprised, and people kind of laugh at me now that find out adult guys that I hang out with now that I used to be a pro gamer, but for me, I'm not surprised at all where it got to and how big it is now. Obviously, we were 15 years, 20 years too late, but yeah, it's pretty wild.
The other thing as well is, if you remember, luckily it didn't continue on, but there was that era in CS where people kept trying to professionalize it by making it like the NFL. You had to use your surname, right? And I always thought, these guys haven't thought the Asian angle through. Like in Korea, like 20% of people are called Kim and Park and Lee. There's only like 5 big names, basically. Like that. I bet you even played with a couple of people called Kim and some like Gamers X or something, right?
Yeah, exactly. It was basically me and Ron, right?
Oh, yes, of course. There you go. Yes.
I always did one crazy what if I always thought about was, what happens if me, Method, Ron, Bombs, just create like some sort of super Asian
That would be
team,
pretty
and
interesting.
Yeah, because we did have that surname era, and it would have been a funny team to put together.
I'd like put it this way: I would like to be the commentator.
Yeah, exactly.
What the fuck would that
So
be?
it was always funny playing against Ron, and we'd always have the Kim surname there. But that definitely was a unique time.
Are you someone where, when you were playing CS, was it actually something where, like, if you felt like you did a good placing or you were good individually, did it like satisfy an itch? Did it actually like form your identity? Do you think you cared about being good at CS?
Absolutely. I found pride, going back to my high school at least, and it's not like I flaunted it, but there were people that knew that I was a pro gamer, and I definitely valued results over individual performance for sure. I think if you look at my stats going back, I probably had the highest number of deaths, to be honest.
Okay.
Again, because I wasn't like a big lurker or anything like that, but I definitely valued results over anything, So that's why, again, for me, it's like whatever the team needs me to do, I will do. I'm not going to be like a selfish player or anything like that. And I definitely valued all that. Like you said, forming my identity, because that, going back home and having an excuse to do all this, I have to be good, right? If anything. So I definitely thought that was important.
Even though it's just a random coincidence, it's also kind of a bit insane that their team got sponsored by Colgate and then you became a dentist.
Oh, yeah.
This is one of those weird things, right?
Yeah. I didn't even think about it that way, but because no, we were sponsored by Tylenol.
Oh, Tylenol. Sorry, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but I mean, I still went into healthcare, but yeah, that was totally towards the tail end of my last 6 months playing. I still remember because I think Torbil was the one.
Yeah, I
that
think he helped
set us
you
up
guys.
with that. Yeah. And by the way, like for as much like hatred we had for Moto and even Torbil, because he was the one that set us up with that deal. I mean, that was my first time thinking like, oh, this is what a manager is supposed to be.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened to him, obviously, but I still remember like I was in college my first 6 months and I was still getting checks in the mail.
Oh, wow.
And I was telling Torbil like, hey, dude, you guys are sending me checks. I'm done. He was like, no, like you signed a contract and we're honoring it. So it was pretty cool going through that experience with him. Yeah, but I wish obviously we could have seen it through, and I kept playing. It kind of, I'm not saying like I was the key factor or anything like that, but it did kind of suck seeing that it didn't work out for them. And at WEG, obviously our team broke up obviously when I wasn't there, and I always wonder like if I would have made a difference, if anything. I would have people messaging me during these events where I couldn't go, or I was done, and saying, why don't you just come join us?
Oh, to try and get you to come out of retirement. Right. I see.
Yeah. But, I did think about it, but at the end I was like, no, I'm done.
By the way, that probably is usually the right one, because I've noticed when people do the comeback like a year or two later, the problem is if you're just not as good immediately, it ends on a sour note, doesn't it, at that point? Like you've got to kind of leave on a high, right?
Yeah, and it's like I think CGS happened, right? That direct, or was it CGS? Direct TV?
Yeah, 2007.
Yeah, so I saw that happening. I was like, oh, damn, I missed out, right? That was one time I was like, okay, I wish I did stay on.
That one was in LA as well, to be fair, so it would have been perfect, right?
So that was one thing I was like telling myself, oh, if I kept playing, I for sure would have been drafted into this, and kind of sucks that I didn't keep playing. But I think besides that, I didn't have any, FOMO or anything like that.
Was there any players on other teams that you wish would have joined Rival or GamerCo, like people you wanted to play with?
That's a really good question. I don't think at the time there were players like I was like, oh man, because I thought our team was complete. I truly thought everyone on our team was really good. There was nobody I wanted to replace. If you're asking me, if somebody possibly left and I had my pick of the litter, I think Rambo for sure. I never really had like a close relationship with him, but he was just always a nice guy, and I always thought he was just, a super solid player, super reliable, always performed well. So I think he'd be one. Who else? Mikey's an obvious one, Method. But, obviously I played with him a lot too during that time. Who else? I remember Fraud was getting pretty good at that point too.
Yeah.
Fraud was getting good. But besides those guys, Volcano.
Oh, right.
I think Volcano would have been a good what if too, because I would get like East Coast players who would reach out to me to try to recruit me, and they would tell me that you're like the West Coast version of Volcano, because we were the same age. We're the same age.
Right.
So I literally had zero relationship with that guy. I never talked to him, never hung out with him or anything. Only just competed against him. But I think that would have been a cool what if as well too.
By the way, even though obviously famously Team 3D just like dominated the WCG qualifiers inexplicably, even in the years when they weren't even that good outside of them, they just always won them. At the same time, I know that actually a lot of those finals for WCGs weren't just like in like some basement somewhere. Some of them were in like New York, or they'd be in like big stages and stuff, right? Was that cool to get to go to those sorts of events and have crowds and stuff?
Yeah, it was cool. I think one of the, like, it was Web to Zone, right?
Yeah, there you go.
I'm still kind of salty about that qualifier because
wasn't the one where it's like Team 3D had better PCs or something dodgy like that? Something like that. Because Torbo had a relationship with them, right?
I know it sounds like an excuse, but Torbo had that Web to Zone relationship, and this is also one of the reasons why I think we were so bitter against them too, because we played the CPL after later on, right? But we had come off that CPL and we played them, and I don't remember exactly, but I really do feel like it's like either way, like the computers weren't that good.
Yes.
That can't happen, right? CPL, the computers were top notch, and they were amazing, right? But it's like we felt like they were on better computers or different computers, number one. And number two, even if they weren't, it's like we were playing in inferior, environments. Like I don't know. It was still kind of salty about that. They did beat us, and I don't remember it being close either. Not close, but I don't think they ran over us or anything like that. I think we lost like 13-10 or 13-9 or something like that. But I remember us talking, because we were like, why can't we just switch? Why can't we just switch computers, right? Or I think, wasn't it even like a best of 2 or best of 3?
Something like that,
Something like that. Yeah, so we were like, why can't we just switch? And like they wouldn't allow it. So it was kind of shady at that point. And I know it sounds like an excuse, but it is what it is, and I'm not going to try to discount the fact that they didn't play well either. They did play well that tournament. Yeah.
I mean, another reason I could also see, because by the way, a lot of here's what's funny about Team 3D, because I was friends with those guys from the beginning, is first of all, because they were the original like top tier, they always had like a little bit of elitism towards certain players, and they always felt like, you're below me and I'm above. And also, they obviously had full salaries. So not only did they think, well, we're salaried and they're just the fucking plebs just playing for nothing, but then all the teams like you, if you're as good and you can beat them, that sort of makes you like, well, why is he getting paid salary? Like, why don't I get? There's kind of a little bit of friction like that in the scene.
Yeah, a little bit of a jealousy and envy for sure.
Yeah.
But again, I looking back now, it's like, what's marketing, right?
Sure.
What's being represented? We were 16, 17 years old. Me, Destructo, Haynes, we were like 16, 17. I think Mark was the oldest, and he was like 20. We had no idea about branding or anything like that at all. So we were definitely jealous and envious for sure. And I'm not saying that's the reason why we hated them much. But I know for sure that we did feel like they did have like an elitist attitude towards us for sure, even though we felt like we beat them, a lot as well.
Did you guys always fly? Did you ever do one of those crazy, everyone gets in a car and drives all the way to Texas? Did you ever do one of those?
I never did that. I know I feel like everyone I've played with has done that.
I've heard a lot of
like
bad
Mark and
stories,
Johnny.
mate. Yeah, like the
But
20
even,
hours
like,
or whatever.
I think like Bombs and Mikey even probably did that, like on the early iterations of teams. But we always flew.
Right.
You know,
It was pretty expensive back then, all the same, though, right? There wasn't the low-cost airlines back then.
I mean, I don't remember us paying for it though. I feel
right.
like we at least had our plane and hotel figured out.
Maybe there was a qualifier or something
know?
on the West Coast.
Yeah, but it's like, yeah, I feel like we either had a qualifier or like Gary Sanchez somehow at least got our expenses paid for.
Right.
But on the flip side of that argument is like I don't think we ever got our prize money on either of those like
Oh,
2 or
wow.
3 tournaments.
Really?
Which,
it was like, dude, it'd be like 10K or something. Like, it was legit money back then. Okay.
I never got any of my prize money from that.
Wow.
Yeah. At least from the first and second tournament, I don't think. I think the third tournament, like CPL, was kind of going downhill. But the first and second tournament, I got nothing.
Right.
And yeah, I mean, like there's stories out there, obviously, of Gary that I'm not going to really go into, and I don't really even know, to be honest. But it's kind of hard to. I do obviously blame Gary, but it's like somebody else had to pay for our tickets and hotel, so I don't see it as a massive loss, but it is what it is.
Well, that's another one of those things where, like you say, what was marketing? It's the same thing back then. If people got ripped off, you were like, oh, well, I guess I'm not getting the money. Right, when's the next game? Like, you just play, don't you? You can't, like, go to take him to court. There was no media to be like, they've stolen the money. Like, you just kind of have to eat it, right?
It's like we won 10 grand. It's like I'm chasing after $2,000. You subtract the expenses. I'm chasing after like 1,200.
Yes.
And it's like all that work to do that. And, again, for me, like back then, it was more about results and stuff like that, and just for the love of the game. So I know for other people, they got really upset because they needed the money, right? But I came from a comfortable, home and stuff like that, so it wasn't really about the money for me. But yeah, it was kind of wild going through that experience. It's like some people just didn't get paid.
Were you one of the guys where when you were at a really good level and then you would go to the lands in California, were you one of those people who took pride in like dominating the lands? Like I know, for example, Masterhook literally told me like, they had to ban me. You had to understand, like I would have won all those ones and they had to like, eventually they had to make it so pros couldn't play and stuff. Were you one of those guys who sort of caused that culture?
Absolutely. I definitely took pride in that, and I think I take pride in the fact that I feel like I had the longest like SoCal LAN run dominance, at least, right? Because I started super early on, and even though I didn't get really, really early on with like the WW iteration with like AR and Method and those guys, but once I got with them, it's like we go to any tournament with me and Mikey on one team, it's done, right? And then that like later on in a transformed to GX, it's like, okay, me, Mikey, and Castro, or any pickup team to go, the tournament's done. Like I would show up to a tournament with somebody, and you could see just the disappointment on the other team's faces like right away, like, oh crap, it's right. And then obviously GX dies, and I go to Rival, obviously dominated every team, every tournament essentially in the SoCal LAN scene. So I feel like I had a good like 3-year run there, and then obviously things slowed down and died off, but that's the one thing that I think I can say with pride that, I did.
By the way, for people who don't know, that is also why I say, like, if people don't know about the LAN scene, that was also just like a moment in time, though. Like, obviously, if I come to LA now, it's not going to be full of LAN centers. It's not going to be full of kids. It's not going to be playing CS, right? That's kind of gone away, that kind of thing.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think it's totally dead, I mean, just from a pure business standpoint, I don't know how I don't even know what the
Everyone
business
has
model
internet
is
now,
now.
isn't it? Yeah. So.
Yeah. I know that there's still a couple around in certain places, but I don't see how you can be running now, one nowadays, especially since everyone just plays from home. But definitely dead these days. But it was crazy during those days. They were everywhere for sure.
I'm sure as well, even though like for high points of the career, you think of CPLs and all these beating 3D and all. I'm sure also you have fond memories of just the days in the Cal scene, and you win the LAN, you go for Korean barbecue with the boys or whatever, people are drinking soju. I bet those were the times, right?
Yes. A lot of good memories. I mean, because it's cool that we go and get to hang out with a bunch of cool people basically until sometimes 2, 3, 4, 5 o'clock in the morning. Like I had so many memories of just coming home at like 6 o'clock in the morning, which is kind of crazy, but it was just so much fun. We got to eat and hang out and talk a lot of trash to each other, essentially, right? But and it's crazy because we talk a lot to each other, but because we see each other at all these LANs, like like a team like Die. We were very competitive against them, and we talked a lot of trash against them. But deep down, it's like we did like hang out with those guys.
They were like your old brother team.
Fun. Yeah, they were funny in their respect too. So yeah, it was really it's an experience that I just would never trade in for anything for sure. It's definitely a unique experience and probably one that's not going to happen again for anybody in this area especially, right? So just going. It was so weird just having something to go to almost every weekend or 3 out of 4 weekends a month, which I did seem like I was, playing for like some sort of varsity team at that point. Yeah, I wouldn't trade it for anything.
By the way, I'm not going to say any names, so I'm not speaking out of school here. But if anyone ever asked that famous question, sometimes people ask in the scene or in media, like, does it inhibit your playing if people smoke weed when they, like, I can tell you in this scene, people were smoking weed all the fucking time and playing. Some of these people would die all the time they played, right? In some of these lands.
Yeah. I famously did not do any of that, right?
Understandable.
Yeah, but, famously my teammates and a lot of other
definitely
did for sure.
Yes.
I'm still in the belief that, these guys would say that they were cracked and all that stuff, that they were better players, but come on.
Was it cool?
No, come on. Yeah. Like, there's no way that at a CPL I would, let those guys do, and they didn't do that, for big matches.
No, I just the lands at SoCal lands, I'm guessing.
Yeah. It seemed like if we were playing like really inferior competition, they would do that, to have fun. But no, like there's no way that you can come and tell me, oh, you can smoke some weed and you're gonna be a better player. I know that people were taking like Adderall and stuff.
Yeah,
like
it was
that,
the early days of that.
Which we didn't. Yeah, I feel like some of the Euros and stuff were like really into stuff, but that sounds like a PED to me. But yeah, there was a lot of definite culture there, and again, like I said, one of those things that I was exposed to, I didn't partake in, but it sure did mature me, really quickly. Like I go back to high school, and I never got bullied in high school, really, but you see these kids thinking that they're so cool because they're starting to drink and smoke weed and stuff like that. I'm sitting there like, I've seen all this stuff like 2 years ago. Yeah. So definitely strong weed culture back then. But yeah, it is what it is.
What about at the end? Because you played with so many different players. Let's do like a Q&A round where it's just like quick fire. So all you do is give me a name, but then give me a reason as well. So in your career, who do you think was the most skilled teammate you played with?
Oh man, skilled teammate. Probably, man.
You had some good
probably
ones.
Probably Corey. Yeah, probably
Haynes.
Corey, to be honest. Yeah, Haynes, for sure. Again, he was a little bit like when he can go on tilt, but when he was like, you could ask anybody, they were scared of him for sure. Because he just had the movement skills too. He had insane movement skills because that wasn't even a thing back then, I think, Yeah, he was just the movement skills, and I kind of watch. I don't watch today, but I see clips like randomly from time to time as the years have gone on, and I see some of these guys play, and it's like, I sometimes feel like I'm watching Corey,
Right.
And I feel like I think they said that in Valorant, what's that player, a Jet? They said that they modeled Jet after him, which is insane, you know? Yeah, so I would say that he was probably the most skilled. I would say Destructo probably comes in a close second. It's again, I didn't really get to play with him since he retired so quickly, but just based on my experience of playing with him for about a year, and because we were always paired up with each other, I sat next to him. I thought he was really good. The other guy that I didn't play against that I thought really good right away was Forrest.
Oh, sure.
He started coming on the scene, and I thought Fraud was actually really good too. Right towards the end too.
Yeah.
Because there's a moment like we thought he cheated. We would talk about it when we were playing. This is when like sucked, but he had a really good op, we thought like he was cheating and we would give him crap about it. But I think when they started to, get good, when they picked up Sunman later, I thought he was good. But I thought Forrest, eye test wise, was really good. I was like, holy crap. And I never got to play against him, fortunately. But yeah, he was, for sure, he was different.
What about, who do you think was the smartest player you played with?
Smartest, I mean, it's a mixture of like Bombs, Mark Masternook, and Johnny Fear. Bombs just like, I think just tactically, like the way he approached things, he just seemed he's very smart, you know. I think Mark and Johnny were also smart, but they were really crafty, and they were really underrated. Like people didn't think that they were smart, right? It's like, oh, it's just a bunch of guys that can frag, you know. But I think overall, you know, because when we were in Rival, we had a hard. That was the one thing. It's not like Johnny wanted to fear. He didn't want to be the in-game leader.
All right.
He was kind of forced into that position. Mark didn't want to be in-game leader too. You know, even though Mark was the guy that came up with a lot of our strats, he didn't want to be the caller, you know, in game. So Fear took that role, and we're glad that he did because he did a good job. I think it's a really tough role to do, you know, to concentrate on the game and call things as you play. So in that respect, I give him credit. But I think Bombs, because I've had so much experience with him too. You know, just not only smart, but just a good in-game leader as well too.
Who do you think was the most clutch teammate you had?
That's a good question. Most clutch teammate. Honestly, all the guys on Rival, it seemed, because like Corey especially was such a big lurker, you know, like in my mindset, and I truly believe this, if Corey had 1 HP and 1 bullet left on his deagle, I felt like he was going to win the round if it was a 1, regardless if he was playing. Like that's how good he was, you know, when he was on. So I would probably say him when he was on. I totally believed in any one of our guys as well too. Method was definitely up there, but if I had to pick one when he was doing well, it was definitely Corey or Haynes.
Right. What about who was the best teammate in the sense of like actual team, not just skilled, like the player for the team, the good guy? Who would fit that bill?
Fear is definitely one of them. Fear is definitely one of them.
Which is funny because if from the outside he had that really shit talking persona, people would never guess it, right?
Yeah, that's why I'm saying that too.
Right.
People wouldn't perceive that, but you know, behind the scenes, he was very level-headed. You know, things would happen behind the scenes that, you know, people would talk crap and stuff like that and whatnot. But he was a really good guy. He was a really good team. They were all really good teammates. You know, that was another thing too, that we all supported each other. We never thought that any of us had to be replaced or anything like that. You know, we were super self-deprecating. You know, amongst each other. You know, it's like we talk trash to other people. People don't know we actually talk trash to each other.
Oh wow.
Time. You know, yeah, and I think that kind of helped, you know, level us a little bit too. But I think yeah, for sure, Fear was probably the best and most consistent teammate. You know, Devin and Destructo and Haynes, they're too young to really care too much, right? Mark was also a good teammate as well too, but Fear stood out to me for sure.
And who was the most underrated teammate?
Most underrated, probably Master Nook, I would say for sure.
But if people don't know, I think because when he was in those early Rivals, they bombed the CPL, so I think people just thought he was an onliner or something. So I also thought, like, maybe he didn't get his credit, you know?
Yeah, and I think he also had this, like, because amongst the top tier players, I think he was the only guy that played with arrow keys.
Oh wow!
You know,
okay.
so yeah, it's like, you know, that's kind of, yeah, it's like, come on, man,
yeah,
right?
Sure.
So yeah, that's like, no, but he was super. I felt like, you know, I feel like the stigma was that he wasn't as good, but he'll tell you confidently that he was good, yes. And we saw it obviously, right? He had a great AK, great deagle. He was clutch as well. He came through. He was always very consistent. And you know, I think game high, like IQ wise, you know, people look at him, he's like, oh, he's just a dumb player, right? And look at this guy just talking too much trash. He must not be that very, you know, not very smart, but he was a super high IQ player. And if anything, again, like tactically, he made a lot of our strats with Johnny, you know, which people didn't know about.
Oh, I forgot there's one more. Who was the funniest teammate?
Funniest teammate. That's probably Mark too. Yeah, that's probably Mark too.
Give me an example. What sort of a thing would he say? Or what would he joke about?
I mean, he was just so like, I don't even want to say some of these things because they're kind of mean. Okay. Yeah, I don't want to, you know, it's like, there was a lot of things that I could tell you afterwards, but okay. I don't want to say it in an interview, but again, we were very self-deprecating to each other, you know, and I think that's the reason why we weren't so bothered about talking trash to other people too, because we did it amongst ourselves. But, you know, he was so confident with everything, you know, he's so loud and rambunctious and wasn't afraid to talk trash, you know. And I think I already told you about how like again we would roll into LAN tournaments and he would just start blasting music and let everyone know that of our presence, essentially, that we were here, you know. Because I was such a quiet player, I remember he would try to get me hyped up and start pushing me and punching me to, like stuff like that. So it was really I think he was definitely the funniest guy on our team, but Fear, all those guys were super self-deprecating, so it was really funny.
At the end of this interview, do you have any final message for people? Do you want to shout someone out or say hello?
I mean, just saying hi to all the friends I've made over the years in Counter-Strike and some of the ones I've kept in touch with. I actually played golf with Fear like 3 weeks ago. But I would do wish that everyone is doing well, and it's crazy to see that the gaming industry, like what it is now, I really don't think I would have made it to that point, especially with all the streaming and stuff too, but it's really wild to see that it has come this far.
Everyone needs a support network, and mine is, of course, my Patreon community, the Screwminati, who in many ways, they're the Sonny to my Cher, saying, I got you, babe. So this video and all the others on my channel were kindly supported by the following names: Ahmed Hadju, Mac Pugnaccio Rakula, Adam Tomlin, Animosity, Jensen Go, Tosh, Toucan, and you know it. Jerky's Minion, my main man, always going to be referenced, one of the best patrons of all time. Would you like to ask a question in my AMA? Maybe you want to suggest a topic or a guest to say on my channel? Do you want teasers, find out who the upcoming Reflections and Talk to Thorin interviews are? Maybe you want to do one of those long discussions where you get to set the topics we talk about. Well, if any of these or others appeal to you, put your money where your mouth is. Join the Screwminati today via the Patreon link in the description box below.